Lion in the Wind, Chapter 25. Bergen slowly roused from his slumber and then sat up. However, his world quickly began to spin, causing him to lay back down. To add insult to injury, his head was pounding like an abused bass drum. He groaned and tried to sit up again, but felt a gentle hand push him back down. "I wouldn't sit up just yet, Mr. Bergen. The drug he used on you takes a bit to wear off," came a kindly old voice. "Who are you?" "Where am I?" asked Bergen groggily. "Just relax and drink this." He then felt a hand take the back of his head and lift it as a warm mug of a sweet-smelling hot liquid was pressed to his lips. He took a sip and felt it tingle in his mouth. He leaned back and tried to put his world back in focus as it spun briefly and then seemed to miraculously clear. He tried to sit up again, but was greeted by the mug of hot liquid again. "Keep drinking. It will make you feel better." Bergen took several more sips and felt his head clear even more. He slowly opened his eyes and saw the kindly face of an old man leaning over him. "Who are you?" he asked. "Keep drinking, Mr. Bergen. You'll need to get that fog out of your head before you decide to go anywhere." Bergen took the cup in his hand and emptied it in several quick gulps. The man laughed. "Be careful. You might burn yourself." Bergen winced. It had been rather hot, but the relief that it brought more than made up for the burning in his throat. The old man took the cup and set it down on a nearby stool. "There, how do you feel now?" he asked. Bergen nodded. "A lot better." "But where am I?" he asked. "You are under the protection of the syndicate. A very dear colleague of yours has asked us to keep you safe." "Who?" asked Bergen curiously. "His name is Brakeman." Bergen's eyes went wide. "Him? But he's just an android. He couldn't have done this." The old man laughed. "He's more than you think he is. He asked us to watch over you in exchange for his assurance that he would bring down Feral Black." Bergen stared suspiciously at the old man. "Feral Black is an honorable man. I've worked for him for years." "No, he's not, Dad," came a voice from across the room. The two men turned to see Brakeman and Chigani standing in the door. The old man stood up, bowed slightly and excused himself. Chigani came over and sat down in front of Bergen as Brakeman climbed onto a nearby stool. "Chigani, what's going on?" "Why am I here?" asked Bergen. Brakeman sighed deeply. "Dad, there's something I need to tell you." Bergen frowned. "I have a feeling I'm not going to like this." Brakeman then spent the next several minutes telling Bergen everything he knew. Bergen took it all well enough, but was still shaken by the experience. "Mr. Black is a traitor," said Bergen contemplatively. "That has not been confirmed with absolute certainty. But all available data at this time leans strongly in that direction. If true, we must put all our efforts into bringing him down and saving this nation. As such, it would be best for you to stay here for now where it is safe," said Chigani. "But what if you're wrong? What if you misunderstood him?" asked Bergen. "We will verify his intentions before moving against him. But we are currently acting under the assumption that his motives are dishonest and potentially treasonous," said Chigani. Bergen nodded. "All right, then do your best and stay safe." "Don't worry. I don't plan to die anytime soon," said Brakeman with a smirk. The two androids then made their way downstairs to where the old man stood waiting. "I'm leaving again as we have a lot of work ahead of us. We'll also be leaving behind a few lions to help you protect the place," said Brakeman. The old man shook his head. "They are not needed. We have our own guards." "They are for my peace of mind," said Chigani. The old man studied the lion for several moments, then asked, "How many will you leave?" "6. The old man scratched his short, rough gray beard and thought about this. "Will they be seen?" he asked. Chigani shook his head. "They will not, unless they are needed to protect you." The old man nodded, and said, "Then we welcome their help." Jocelyn and Black stepped into the General Secretary's office and proceeded to have a seat. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. What brings you here today?" asked the General Secretary. It seems that a problem has arisen that we need to address, said Jocelyn. The General Secretary furrowed his brow in interest. Oh? What kind of problem? Do you remember the Bergen lions? Asked Jocelyn. A smile came to the General Secretary's face. Yes, I do. Wonderful creatures they are. They have my respect and honor for all they did to save our nation. Black's expression began to grow remorseful. He sighed. Yes, their achievements are to be commended. However, it would appear that they may now have become a danger to our people. The General Secretary perked up slightly. How so? As I'm sure you're aware, the Bergen lions are sentient robots. The General Secretary nodded. Of course. Everyone knows that. Yes, and with that comes emotions. It is an integral part of what sentience is. However, this has led to the creation of a dangerous flaw in their programming. One that we believe may become lethal if not quickly addressed. A lethal flaw, said the General Secretary curiously. Yes. Apparently Dr. Bergen had been secretly administering software patches to his lions over the past several years to keep their AIs from breaking down and going mad while he worked on a more permanent fix. But now that he's vanished without a trace, I fear that his efforts have failed and he has paid the ultimate price with his life. The General Secretary stared suspiciously at Black. You're not suggesting that his lions are responsible for his disappearance, are you? Black shrugged. What other answer is there? They've proven to be skilled trackers without rival, and yet they have been completely unable to find him. That's a bit suspicious if you ask me. That's nonsense and you know it. Just because they haven't found him doesn't suddenly make them murderers. Even if that were true, what would make them want to kill their own creator? Fear, said Black flatly. Of what? Of being killed. The General Secretary looked at Black in surprise, and then studied him deeper. And why should I believe you? He asked. Black laid a small folder in front of the General Secretary. This has everything in it that you need to know. I've had several of my best cybernetics scientists looking at the core AI software that was used to program all the lions, and it is indeed fatally flawed. Even if many of the problems have already been patched, it's still only a matter of time before they cross the line into madness. The General Secretary picked up the folder and looked at the pages inside. After a bit, he threw it down and grunted angrily. I find this information to be circumstantial at best. I am not going to order the destruction of over 600 war heroes based on information you claim is valid. Black shook his head. I'm not saying we need to destroy them. We simply ask them to come in and be deactivated until a cure can be found for this flaw. Once that is fixed, we can then return them to normal life. The General Secretary's eyes narrowed. So instead of killing them, we're unlawfully incarcerating them? Not unlawfully. What we'd be doing is completely within the bounds of the law. If a madman with a knife was terrorizing the streets, wouldn't you have him arrested and put under a doctor's care until he could operate as a normal member of society again? Said Jocelyn. The General Secretary nodded. Of course I would. You'd be silly not to. Then how is this any different? Well, they're machines for one. They think and act differently than we do. And, while it's still somewhat weird for me to treat them as living creatures, and citizens no less, it's still my job to protect them through the power of the law. I will not do anything against them without probable cause, said the General Secretary. Black shook his head. As the Senator already said, we're not unlawfully incarcerating them. We're simply acting in the best interests of them and everyone else in this nation, said Black. The General Secretary's eyes narrowed. If they are brought in for treatment, are you sure you can cure them? He asked. If we can't, someone will eventually come along who can. And what if nobody is ever able to fix them? Black shrugged. Technology is forever evolving. At some point in time someone will be able to replicate his work and fix what he could not. I know that Dr. Bergen's designs are revolutionary beyond the scope of what others are capable of doing right now. but there's nothing that says his work can't eventually be replicated by others, and then surpassed. After all, technology always continues to progress, and with it so will our understanding of robotic sentience. The General Secretary thought about this for a moment. And what if we call them and they don't come in, he asked. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Although I don't think we'll ever need to. The General Secretary nodded. All right, I'll see to it that they're called in and held for examination. But remember this. When you begin dealing with the Lions about this issue, be diplomatic. The last thing I need is over 600 angry lions beating down my front door. Black smiled beatifically. Oh, but of course. Delgra looked up as Odivian walked into the office, put his laptop down on the desk, and faced it towards him. Looks like I found something. Black seems to be ordering considerable quantities of raw materials and parts that don't match up with his normal purchasing patterns. Plus he's been doing a lot of unusual research into weapons systems lately. It's certainly not your typical fare for a cybernetics company who specializes in home and hospital cybernetic products, said Odivian. Delgra looked at the list for several moments, and then reached over to his screen and turned it to face Odivian. The sergeant carefully read the headline emblazoned on the screen, and blinked in surprise. Lions to be recalled, he said. Delgra turned the screen back towards himself and nodded. It would seem he's playing part of his hand now, he replied. Odivian thought about this. What do you think he's up to? Could it be a new weapons system or something, he asked. I don't know, but whatever this is, this recall, and your list, are part of a much bigger package. That much is obvious. But where do the Lions fit into this? As a great philosopher once said, remove your greatest threat before proceeding with your greatest plan, said Delgra. So you're thinking that he's trying to take over the country, said Odivian. I'm beginning to think that may be the case. Even so, we still need to find out what he's planning, and if it's treasonous, then we need to do everything in our power to stop him. Black pranced triumphantly past Elgar, who appeared a bit puzzled by his actions. He followed Black into his office and closed the door behind him. I take it that all went well, he asked. Black pivoted on his heels with a flash of bravado, and said, better than I could have hoped for. While it took a bit of convincing to get that fat slob to go along with my plans, he ultimately did. Now we simply wait for the Lions to come to us. I especially want to see Chigani. Having him on our side will be very important. I will bring him to you as soon as he arrives. Excellent. And have you found Bergen yet? Said Black. Elgar shook his head. Black's face went from an expression of glory to one of anger and frustration. Have we at least found who kidnapped him? Elgar nodded. Black perked up. Oh really? Who is it? Brakeman, said Elgar flatly. Black stared at Elgar in confusion. Who? He's a small servant droid that Dr. Bergen built to assist Persia. He appears to be the mastermind behind Bergen's disappearance. How do you know that? Asked Black. Our security teams were investigating a low-level intrusion into our core systems and discovered evidence that links him to the false summons we received. Black blinked in surprise. You mean we've been outsmarted by another one of Bergen's infernal machines? He said. We have. He may also have knowledge of our plans, which would explain why he kidnapped Bergen and Persia. Black thought about this for several moments and then grinned slyly. It appears that I may have found a worthy opponent. And a machine no less. Well, then we need to capture him and find out what he knows about our plans, and where he's hidden those too. We need them alive for our plans to work. Elgar nodded. We're already watching for him. Black grinned. Good. I look forward to talking to this Brakeman character as soon as you capture him. He then paused for a second, and said, No, actually, I don't. When you capture him, download his mind and then have him destroyed. I don't want to risk him escaping and warning the Lions. Elgar bowed. As you wish. Chigani listened with interest to a radio message ordering them to turn themselves in as it was repeated over and over again on a continuous loop. He stared at Pen. "What do you make of it?" he asked. Pen shrugged. "I really don't know. Are the other lions nearby?" "Yeah. All of our brethren are in the valley below. They await your orders." "Good. Any news from Brakeman?" Pen shook his head. "Not since he left for the laboratory yesterday. He may not have found anything worth reporting yet. So we probably won't hear from him until he does." Chigani thought about this. That's possible. "So what do we do about this call to come in?" asked Pen. Chigani shook his head. "We are not to obey it. I have a feeling that, if we do, we'll be deactivated and many terrible things will happen while we are offline." Pen looked at him curiously. "Like what?" "I don't know, but if what Brakeman showed us about Black is true, we will need to remain functional in order to protect our people." "Well, we know he's involved in quite a few shady things, but this recall," said Pen. "He wants something, and this recall verifies that fact." "What do you think he's trying to do?" asked Pen. "I don't know, but I intend to find out." Pen's eyes narrowed. "Please tell me that you're not about to do what I think you are." Chigani nodded. Pen groaned. "But that's insane. You're playing right into his hands." "I know. But I must see for myself what he is up to." "Then I'm coming with you." Chigani shook his head. "No, I have another task for you. I need you and Teal to take charge of the other lions while I am away. If something happens to me, you are to lead them north into the mountains. When the time is right, you are to return and save our people. But you're our leader. I can't do your job. Nor am I going to let you just walk into danger without me there to protect you," protested Pen. Chigani roared angrily. "Listen to me. I've seen what you can do. You're a natural-born leader. If you did not have this trait, I would not have entrusted our family to you. I know you want to go with me, and are loyal to the end. I respect that. But this is something I must do alone." A sad expression came across Pen's face. "You'll come back, right?" he said. Chigani nodded. "I will do my best. But only Mashwa knows what the future holds for me. If you do not hear from me within 24 hours, do as I've said and take everyone to safety." Pen nodded. "I will."